Hello, I'm back at you trying to do another video. Just completed my draft on this league. Got into it. This is the third draft now, so massive changes have happened with this league team. When I got it, it was on the borderline of being a fringe playoff team. I didn't like the age of the stars, so I decided to blow it up. And I'm going to go through the progression of blowing it up and then where I'm at today. I'm not going to go trade by trade. I'm just going to try and generalize the years, and then show you kind of some of the behind the scenes way I did it. I'm kind of not really. I mean, let's just get into it, right? Do it. So, all right, we're going to do the first one here. Whoa, bumping shit around, right? So when I got this team, this was my players, right? At Aaron Rodgers, an okay kind of player, right? Getting old. This is 2 years ago. This is 2019, right? And this was at the point when he was talking about, retiring, not wanting to be in Green Bay, that whole 9 yards. If you look at this team, it's very Green Bay heavy. Aaron Jones is on there. Rashad Penny, who didn't do anything until this year. This is 2 years ago now, mind you. Samuels, Jamal Williams, Damian Harris, who finally did something this year, and Kenny Drake, who's done already. So, I mean, just between the running backs and quarterbacks, when I looked at this, I didn't like Rodgers' age. I didn't like Drake as a player or Harris. Aaron Jones was all right, but I didn't like how he always got hurt his first couple of years. Didn't think that he was going to continue on that path. And actually, from this point on, he's gone downhill because at this point he was a top 5 or top 3 running back. And I traded him away. Didn't get enough because I didn't know what the heck I was doing exactly at that point. But didn't get enough for him. Jalen Samuels, Penny, I mean, yeah. Odell Beckham has done nothing. Devontae Adams has been a star, but I did trade him, and I got good return on him twice, I guess, the way it winds up being. And then, Golden Tate, Sterling Shepard, Mecole Hardman, Kudi Kiki. I mean, there's only 3 decent wide receivers on there, and Beckham's been hurt the entire time, the last 2 years of playing. So, other than in the playoffs, so you really can't even count him. So this team would have been dog shit. Travis Kelce, I wound up trading him right away just for the simple fact that with his age prospect at that point, by the time I figured I would get this team turned around, So this is what I had for a team. I mean, that's not looking good. You figure you'd have something a little bit extra special if you had a team like this, right? But so let's get this in here. Hopefully, what the heck? All right. Let's get this up here. All right, let's get image 2 in here. So we'll go with that. Boom. So this is the only draft capital I had, right? This is downright god awful, as we will put it, right? So with that being said, it's not a good situation to be in, right? This kind of a roster with only that many player or picks. In 2 years, 4 picks. A second, but a third, fourth, and a fifth with this roster for 1 year. So I knew when I looked at that roster, I said, I need draft capital. I need to replace guys. I mean, free agency isn't going to help me a ton. I'll be able to add some stuff and take some chances on free agents, but I can't do it that much. And so I've got some decent trade chips, and I've got to get value for them now so I can start turning them over so I can get the process started. I mean, I probably could have won between 6, maybe 8 games, hitting some good free agents, but with a third, fourth, and a fifth round pick in that draft, there was nothing for me to do. And I wound up making a bunch of trades, and I wound up getting some draft capital, all right? So I just wanted to show that. And so let's go to number 3. What? No. That's next year. So this was the team that I started with. So that's basically the size of it. Nothing with nothing equals nothing, right? That's pretty much how I'm going to start it off. All right, so let's go now and let's go back. Let's go after after I got into it, after I got into the first draft, and this is where we're at, right? So I wound up making a bunch of trades. I wound up actually trading Adams for Tyreek Hill and some stuff. And then I wound up trading Tyreek Hill back to the guy who I traded Adams to because apparently he had buyer's remorse or seller's remorse, right? But I wound up getting Allen and Fournette in those transactions, plus a couple firsts, couple seconds. So I made out pretty well. Didn't do as well as I should have, but I made out pretty well. So, but this is after. Well, actually, hold on. I need to go up one more here, right? Image 4. Okay. So that very first year, before I get into this, right? Let me go back now. Now I'm doing craziness here. So with this roster, I made a bunch of trades. I wound up acquiring the 2.8 and the 212 and the 3.1, right? So I'd moved up, and the 3.9 was mine, and I wound up getting a 3.5. So these are the picks I wound up acquiring along the way with a bunch of trades. I think the first 2 years in this league, I made 30 or 40 trades each year to turn this thing around. But I got Hamler at 2.8. At that time, I thought it was great. If he hadn't gotten hurt, he might be something different. But Laviska and Claypool, and year one, I'm going to show you in a second here how much that changed my roster, right? So when I got into this, and so I got into the next year after I made my draft picks. So this is what I turned it into, because these picks were my first draft. All right, so that's why I was confused there, right? So now let's see. So that's that. Okay, so image 3, yeah. So image 3, yeah, there we go. So by the end of the first full year, this is what my roster looked like over here, right? And so these were the draft picks I made the year before. And then way down there, can't do it, way down, whatever, way down there, right? Though that was the extra guys I had. And the only guy on the bottom there I had was good, that was Gaskin. Now, as you see, I had picked up Darnell Mooney, Gabriel Davis. I actually got those guys off of waiver wires plus Gaskin. So just because I cut my team down so far, I literally got some free guys, right? Guys that went undrafted. Also in this year, because that was a weird year as far as coming in. That's when Fournette got dropped by Jacksonville, and Robinson came from nowhere and wanted to be in the starter and was really good that year, right? So this is the roster I wound up having. And this roster was pretty much terrible, but I started off like 1-5, but I wound up 5-8. So I started coming on at the end of the year with this one. Josh Allen was the #1 quarterback. I mean, I wound up getting Akers, and the reason why I have the draft picks below is I wound up getting Akers and Judy for Shenault and Claypool and a first-round pick. I wound up also getting a third-round pick or something like that back, but I gave up a fourth-round pick. So, but I had the draft capital to be able to make a maneuver like that. So, and it was one of the first-round picks I got for, no, it was my first-round pick. So and that was for this year exactly. So I wound up making the playoffs, and I should have made a deeper run, but I wound up giving him 1.8 or whatever it was. So it's still a good player, but he's waited 2 years for it, right? But I wound up getting Judy and Akers for those guys out of the first draft. So as you can see, the running back situation started changing a little bit. I wound up getting Singletary, picked up Jeff Wilson, thought that he was going to wind up taking some pay away from Mostert, because I knew Mostert would get hurt, but Jeff Wilson blew out his knee in the offseason, so that's a whole lot of fun stuff there. But as you can see, the wide receivers started turning around over there. Boyd, Gabriel Davis, Judy, Tyler Johnson, Darnell Mooney, Curtis Samuel, Deebo Samuel, and Thielen. And I picked up Deebo when he was hurt because nobody had any faith in him. I was a Deebo truther. Yes, I was. But if you look at the bottom there with the IR further down, I mean, I got Gaskin down there, O.J. Howard, Terrell Davis, yay, and KJ was down there, and Randall Cobb. So that was about, so that's where we were at with that. So let's jump into image 5. Oh no. So I need to get to the draft pick here. Not that one. That's one I wanted to get rid of. All right, let's look at here. So image 6, what are you? Okay, so with that being said, when I had this roster, after I made the picks, this is what I wound up with draft capital after the first year. All right. So going into the 20, I wound up having all these second round picks and first round picks that I wound up trading for guys because a lot of draft capital while still maintaining a decent team going forward, right? So I think, yeah, because that was 2020, I made the picks. Yep, and the Hamler and stuff like that. So these were going to wind up being my picks. So it would have been last year's picks because 2022, these are this picks. So as you can see, if you remember from the very first slide in the 2021, I had 1 second round pick. The one that says beer, that was the only pick I had in 2021. So I acquired all the rest of those picks while making the team a lot better and a lot younger. So that is what it is. So I had a bunch of picks coming up in this year, and actually the 4th round picks and the 5th round picks, I didn't use them. The first and a couple of seconds I wound up getting rid of as far as in trades, and you will see that coming here forward. All right. So let's march on. So let's go to image 7. All right. So when we get back into here, in the slideshow, we're going to go to the next year then, right? So then this is what we had for the roster, you know, at towards the end, so last year. So now I wind up, well, I got to put the draft in here too, right? I think this should be the draft. So my second draft, this is what I wound up doing with all those picks, because remember I just showed you all the picks that I wound up having. So with more trades, this is what I wound up doing. I wound up getting Bateman, Trey Lance, as you can see, and Mac Jones. So I got backups with growth with Allen. I mean, he doesn't get hurt, but that allows me to grab some guys. At pick 410 at 47, Mac Jones is on the board. What else am I going to do? Of course I'm going to draft him. Even though it's a 1 quarterback league, he's still got value, and so many guys have crappy old guys, and so many guys are going to be retiring in the next couple of years. I mean, Ryan and Roethlisberger, all these guys are just retiring. So I figured it was a good bet. But look at how much the running backs have switched around now here. So, I mean, I've got the Los Angeles Rams handcuff with Henderson and Akers. Let's see, anything else down there that's interesting? Tunyon, Hawkinson, Schultz, and Jordan. That's what I ended up the season with last year. So that's the end of the year roster after I've done everything. So that was kind of coming into this year. So these are some, and I stacked a bunch of young guys who I thought might get some pub in the off season before the draft. Now we just had the draft. So as you can see, I think that that the team is a whole lot better already. And I knew that I was going to be in playoff contention coming into this year after I made those picks. And I knew that the picks that I made here weren't going to necessarily help me this year, although Chuba helped me quite a bit because Christian went down. So he wound up being my 3rd running back a lot of times when he was starting. Now, he didn't produce a ton, but hey, he gave me that option, right? And so I wound up trading away Amari Rodgers in one of my deals. I think that might have been the TJ Hawkinson deal. Obviously, I've got the top 4 draft, well, I got 4 of the 5 draft picks left. So I knew when I drafted him, I would be hanging on to him. So that gets us to that position. So let's see. I think image 9 is going to be, so yeah. So if you remember, I started off with none. I blew up and had a bunch of draft picks, and then I whittled it down. So this is what I had coming into this year, right? So I wound up using the number 2. I wound up during the draft making a trade for another number 2. Being this draft was so weak, I tried to move my 4th and 5th round picks. Nobody wanted them. They're going to give me $5. And I said, meh. So, I mean, I would have felt really bad, but those 2 4th round picks wound up being 4-1 and 4-2. The next 2 draft picks weren't used, and half of the picks in the 4th round weren't used. So it was really more like a 5th round this year in the 4th round in this league, because fairly educated players And nobody did kept a bunch of terrible guys or made a bunch of terrible cuts. So there are those guys in those leagues that do that kind of thing. So as you can see, now I've got a decent roster, and I still have assets by making a bunch of trades. So let's tear off and go a little bit further down the road, right? So let's go to this year. All right. And boom, right? So this is my what I wound up having as far as a roster currently. So as you saw, I had basically nothing to start with. I had Aaron Rodgers. I had Adams. Okay, I had Adams, Odell Beckham, who nobody wanted at that time because he was already injured when I got him, and Boyd. So 4 guys, plus Jones, Aaron Jones, and Kelsey. All old, all often injured, all Green Bay. Had to break it up, had to blow it up. And then also I had 4 picks for the next 2 years, right? So there was no way I was going to be able to compete or keep moving. So blowing it up, coming back, and this is where I'm at currently. So you'll be able to see that. Let me get to the next images, the last ones. So let's see here. All right. So after everything is all said and done, changing the roster, this is what I still have for picks coming up. So I haven't mortgaged my future, right? I'm down 1 second, but I still have 2/4 or 3/4 and 2/5 next year, which is going to be a strong draft. So I will also be able to amend my roster over here, amend my roster, right? I will be able to add some guys in if I need to make a trade. I'm pretty stacked all the way up and down the board. I'm going to be waiting for IR, somebody to get hurt, either on my team or somebody else's team, because if somebody's hurt on my team when they go on IR, well, then I can add somebody down to the IR and I pick up a defense or a kicker prior to the season. If somebody else's guy goes down, they're going to do what? They're going to be looking for a good guy. Well, look at the list, right? Look at the list, right? I probably have somebody that they might want and they're going to have to pay for him. So that's a nice thing about the 4th round picks is, okay, I give him somebody over there and add a 4th round pick. Now do I get a 1st or a 2nd round pick back for that? We're going to find out, right? So let's do that. Okay, so these are the 2 guys I wound up getting in the draft. Now remember, I did not use the 2 4th round picks and I did not use the 2 5th round picks, but I did use the mid second, which was 2.7, and I wound up trading Michael Carter for 2.1 and $25. But so I will actually show you that here now. There you go. So there you go. And those were the trades I made pre-draft. I also traded Tyler Boyd, the last vestige of the original team, for Chase Edmonds because I had Gaskin, right? So I figured, all right, let's take the shot on the Miami offense. And Edmonds is supposed to be the starter. I think that I'm a little bit thin on my running backs, which is also why I got, right here, 2 running backs. So with those 2 running backs, along with Hill, I do have the handcuff in LA. I've got Fournette, who should be towards the top 5, right? Hopefully I'll be able to get through. I also got the quarterbacks up on top. Mac Jones may be a trade piece this year, some middle of the year. I mean, usually about 25% of the quarterbacks go down. So we'll see. See how that pans out. I've also got a plethora of tight ends down here. So I've got, so I mean, you can see that. I got Hawkinson, Brevin Jordan. I've got Tunyon below that. So trying to get that in there, but I think that my wide receivers are pretty good. Marshall right now is supposed to start. Everybody else is either a number 1 or number 2 wide receiver on their roster. I mean, Thielen and Allen Robinson are supposed to be number 2 wide receivers. Thielen has been turning in about wide receiver 10 to 20 numbers the last 3 years. And the average is right around the top 10 average per game, right? Even with missing some games with injury. And Allen Robinson's getting the fresh start in LA again. So those guys could, be more like wide receiver ones, then twos. Obviously, Mooney's a 1, Debo's a 1, Judy is supposed to be a 1, and Bateman's supposed to be a 1. So, worst case scenario with this team, my flex is going to be a wide receiver or even a tight end, because I'm so stacked there with Schultz and Hawkinson. Quite easily, depending on the matchup, I might be able to actually start a tight end and feel good about it. So, and that depends on how things work out. I mean, with Rodgers too, or Tunyon, I'm sorry, down there, because I think that Tunyon is going to be one of Rodgers' mainstays as far as targets for the year. So that's where we're pretty much at. I mean, so I have a lot of faith. I think that there's a lot of upside on this roster compared to what I started with just over 2 years ago and 3 drafts. Like I said, the first 2 years I made almost 40 trades. This year I've slowed down dramatically. I've got guys I like. I've got guys with upside. If somebody's going to shoot me an offer that has value and upside compared to what I'm looking at currently, well, that's what I'll be looking at. Making a move on that one. So, I mean, like I said too before, I've got lower draft picks as well as higher draft picks for next year. A lot of my guys are very young, so I don't even know if I need them, because I've so overhauled this roster in the last 2 years, right? I mean, Hawkinson is one of the older players. I mean, it's Hawkinson, Thielen, Debo, Allen Robinson, and Fournette. I mean, they're like the old guys on the roster. Josh Allen, who's 25 or 26. Yeah. So that's where it sits. Here you go. Pat myself on the back, right? I think it's the thing is with this, I went from being somewhere between 4 and 6 probably with that original roster to being the top 3-ish, 3-4-ish in this league. So it gives me a chip chair and a chance. Had I played my cards right last year and didn't load up like you saw the slide before, the main one, if I had not loaded up and if I had put my best lineup in, I would have won the first round playoff game, and I would have wound up in the championship, because the guy the next week just got murdered with COVID stuff last year. So within 1 year, I should have been playing for the championship. Now, I would have got killed in the championship, but hey, I'd have been there, and that would have been a talking point. So I was too busy thinking about the future. I was just happy to make the playoffs with this team. This year, I'm not going to be happy making the playoffs. I'm trying to make the championship, and then let the chips fall where they may. So that's where my head's at this one. This team also, I've got a pretty good division. I've got one other competitor in the division, and he's a top 4 or 5 kind of team. So I think that I'm going to probably be above him. But again, injuries. I've tried to build this team very wide to make sure I can absorb injuries and have assets to be able to trade for the future and keep the ball rolling. This is where I like to get teams where you have good young assets all the way over there, right? Up and down the lineup. Quality guys with upside. They're not all the way there yet. It's not you look at this team on paper, it's not a super monster team, but every one of these guys I can see having a very good year. I can see every one of those wide receivers having 220 points or more this year. How are we going to go wrong? If that's the case, I can see 2 of the running backs having 240 or more points. And then, a couple other ones, maybe 200 points. And then if the injuries happen and these backup running backs wind up taking major roles, well, then I'm just flying. And I've got 3 starting quarterbacks, 2 of them extremely young, and 4 tight ends, all of them young. All of them 25 and under. Well, I guess Tunyon's 26. But yeah, I mean, literally the draft capital down here, I can just give that all away for the next 2 years. And I think that this team, if I just plugged and played and let it roll, would be competitive for two solid years right now. Now, with that being said, that's not a guarantee. That's kind of a hopeful brag, but I think that that's where this team is about at. And I obviously want to keep increasing it because I'm still a good step or 2 behind the top team or 2 with how their wide receivers, how young and how good they are. Because they've got several guys like Debo. I've got one. I mean, I see Bateman maybe taking that step, maybe Judy taking that step, maybe Moody taking that step where he's a top 15 type guy. But, you know, we'll see if it happens. Hopefully Akers and Fournette can be top 10 type running backs on this team. And then I'll really have something. But until it's proven out, and then of course next year Fournette is going to be getting old. So is Brady coming back? And if Brady doesn't come back next year, then Fournette is going to be an issue. So that's why you always want to keep capital down there to help your team out. So don't shortchange yourself. Keep capital. I don't get like the team that I bought, where you had no draft capital. You had nothing but old guys and you had garbage on the bottom. For young guys, I mean, with no upside. That's where you don't want to be. All right, I guess that about sums it up for this video. Hopefully you guys can read it. It's tough for me to read on the screen because, you know, the app I'm using shrinks everything down to about that big, and then I'm like squinting and I only got one good eye anyway. So this good eye's a good one, this one's a bad one. So I don't know if you can see the redness in it or the weirdness in it, but that's the way it is. So that's just over a 2-year time period with this team, with the picks. And I know that with these 2 draft picks that I made, I wound up reaching. But just with that trade down there, you can see with the Spiller and the Carter deal, I wound up trading one of those first round picks that I was supposed to have this year. I was one being 111. So I knew at the trade deadline last year that this draft wasn't really deep in running back. So I took the flyer on Carter, hoping that he would make it through. Now, if I had Carter was supposed to be one of my top 3 running backs, along with Fournette and Akers. All right. And I was hoping that Gaskin would sneak through again, but he didn't. So I got hammered on 2 guys. Again, that's why you need the capital down there. But the way I looked at it, when the guy offered me 2.1, I was like, well, I can just hang on to, and the guy at 2.1 obviously got Hall at 1.1, right? So now he's got both of them, right? So it worked out for him too. But I said I could look at Carter and be angry all year, and because I gave up 111 for him, and now 111 probably would have been Christian Watson. Okay. But I could have and not been able to start him all year, you know, look at him sitting on my roster and everything, or I could just take a huge flyer on Spiller. So I wound up reaching for him probably 3 or 4 picks, but I didn't like any of the other running backs in that area, right? I'm not a fan of either of the 2 whites. I mean, they're probably going to be okay, but I'm not at 2.1 or 2.2 or 2.3. I'm not trying to get okay. I'm trying to get upside. Pierce, again, I think okay. Brian Robinson, I'm not picking him that early. So that's what I was looking at. So it was either Spiller at 2.1 because that I knew I had a later pick, and I was like, all right, if I do take Spiller at 2.1, tried to trade back for a couple hours and I wasn't able to, so I just took Spiller, took the guy who I wanted, wound up reaching a couple, 3, 4 picks. Well, I knew that because I had 2.7 and I have decent receivers, I was going to be in the area of Bell, Algier, Alec Pierce, maybe Tolbert even, depending on how many guys went off the board. And so I liked all those guys better than the running backs that I just mentioned that are usually going in the early second. So that's why I wound up reaching on Spiller. And in this particular draft, the guys that I had left were Algier and Pierce were my top 2 options. Alec Pierce. And Tolbert was a distant 3rd, and I think John Mechie was still out there too. But basically it came down to those 2 guys, and I, went over and over and over. And I know that Alex Pierce has more value, but remember what I said about 5, 10, maybe 15 minutes ago in this video, that this team is probably like a top 3 team in the league. So what I did was I took Algier instead of Pierce, hoping that Algier, because hopefully I've got enough depth at wide receiver to cover any injuries, to cover bye weeks, to cover anything, along with tight ends, that if I don't have to make a move. So I figured if I took Algier, that by the second half of the year, maybe, just maybe, he might be able to sneak in as my flex guy if he winds up wrestling the starting position away, or they go to him and Cordell either gets hurt or he's just being a wide receiver. So that's kind of what was my decision-making process on the Tyler Algier pick and that pick. So that's pretty much that sums it up, I guess is all I'll say with that. And this video I think is long enough. I've kind of explained enough. You're able to see hopefully a drastic difference in the rosters as we went along, and to go from there. So let me start closing out some of these views. Right there goes that, boom, boom, boom. So that's what we have left here is the roster. Let's make that nice and big so you can see it. 8 running backs, 7 wide receivers, 4 tight ends. Like I said, I could easily, now this is going to sound stupid, but I could easily see all 4 of my tight ends being in the top end or just right there. I think Brevin Jordan has a shot at being anywhere between 10 and 15 for tight ends this year. And if he does that, he's going to be very valuable, being that this is only his 2nd year and tight ends usually take 3 to 5 years to break out. All these guys, like I said, are fairly young. Tunyon had 1 breakout year. Hawkinson has been right about top 5, the last couple of years, and Schultz, finally people are catching on. I've had him for 2 years, and told he was terrible for 2 years, especially in this league. So that's that. Like I said, a whole lot of upside. It could all fall apart very easily because these aren't 100% proven players, but I do like the upside on these guys. I like the chance I'm taking. I think I've got enough age and youth to go together, and hopefully I'll even be able to make some moves. So we'll see what happens. Maybe I'll give you an update later in the year on this one, and hope you enjoyed it. By the way, if you like this video, click and subscribe. The more subscribers I get, the more stupid videos I'll make. I'm gonna make one with every team, well, almost every team. A lot of my teams that I can tell a compelling story with, right? So I'm going to wind up doing that. I've done 2 of them now, and probably a couple more I'm going to wind up doing, I guess. Yeah, I'm not going to do them all, but I want to get doing some more stuff. I want to get the software lined up so that way I can have guests on and talk to me about stuff, or I may just try having them on the phone so that you guys can hear them and how we talk back and forth too. I think that would be kind of stupid, but you never know. Might see a different side of me where I can actually think about stuff in real time and go about it, like talking about trades and offers. Also, if you guys have any questions or you want my opinion on a trade, obviously, I think you can see I've done a lot of trading, especially in this league. You can put it down in the comments below. I check it sometimes multiple times a day and sometimes once a week. So the more subscribers and stuff I get, obviously I'm going to be able to come to it more often. With that being said, let's get back to the front page and end this video, right? Hope you guys, like I said, liked this video. Like, click, and subscribe, and then we'll go from there, right? Once again, signing off for J&J Dynasty. Until next time.